Previously on The Business.
We're talking blacklisting. It's something which sends shivers down most people's spines when you talk about being blacklisted. And joining us in studio is Marina, the CEO for the Consumer Profile Bureau. Marina, welcome to the show this morning. It's great to have you in person in the studio. Thanks for getting here today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
We've primarily focused on small businesses on this show. We also focus on the end consumer, but I think it's something which bears great interest to people who may own businesses, and we'll roll out those implications as we go. First of all, I'd like to start by asking you, what does it mean and what does it take for somebody or an organization to be blacklisted?
Okay, I think the term blacklisted are commonly known in the market, but everyone in the legislative environment does not want to call it blacklisting, but default listing. Okay. So a default listing means that there's two parts of default listing. Can be an enforcement one, it can be behavioral as well, and then on top of that you can have a judgment as well. So that profiles how you are reacting in terms of your credit agreements in the market. Is it negative, is it positive? So like your enforcement is you are handed over, behavioral you're a slow payer, but both of them you as a company and as a director can be listed, and it depends on what agreement was signed at that point. But to be blacklisted will depend, like for instance, I'm the CEO of a credit bureau, I'm not allowed to be blacklisted, then I can't stand as a director or a CEO. So it depends on the actual company, and it also, can you be a director if you're blacklisted? Most times no.
Is that according to the Companies Act, or would that fall within the corporate governance regulations of the company? That if a director can hold that office if they've been blacklisted in their personal capacity?
Corporate governance. So I don't think it definitely says in the Companies Act you cannot be a director, but certain industries says that you cannot be a director in that industry if you're actually blacklisted.
Marina, I was doing some research on this because it is quite there's a lot of information for people to be aware of, and I think that's probably one of the problems, which results in you saying, well, we use the term blacklisted, but we prefer to call it something else. And one of the things I came across, which I myself had kind of forgotten about over the years, was that there are different categories of these default listings. And so we tend to assume, oh, I've been blacklisted, it's a black mark against my name. And it may be in some categories, but not necessarily in others. So is there some kind of central pool of information you're defaulted for, let's say, a bank default, but it impacts a whole bunch of other things?
Okay, at the credit bureaus, we hold different kinds of data for consumers. We've got positive payment profile data, so if you are actually paying your accounts on time, it's a positive payment profile. You also get a negative payment profile data. Then you've got your listings, which is your default listings, and you've got your judgments. When a credit provider goes and analyze whether they will actually give you credit, or when somebody wants to set up an agreement with you as a company, they will look at all those things. So your default listing is a portion of what they're looking at. They are looking at how are you behaving in paying your accounts as well. So default listing also can happen at one bureau, it can happen at 5 bureaus.
I wanted to ask you about the bureaus, because I think people aren't aware that there's more than one bureau.
Yeah, currently we've got 13 credit bureaus in South Africa, but there's only 4 main bureaus, which we call full payment profile bureaus: Experian, TransUnion, XTS and CompuScan. CPB is a reseller for those, and we're also in the process of becoming a large credit bureau. But you need to check your credit record at all the bureaus, because let's say, for instance, one of the big banks will do default listing at only one bureau, so they won't do at another bureau. So you need to check your profile at all the bureaus, because not all of them has got the same default information. They share the same judgment information, they share the same payment profile information, but they do not share the same default information.
Which is probably,
No, carry on.
Which is probably why there are people who have said, oh, but I thought my name was taken off the list, and it could well have been taken off the list at one bureau, but not necessarily at another. So now how does that relate to the ads we see online? Check your credit report. How do you know if that's going through all the bureaus or not? I think you're allowed to check 1 a year for free and
Yeah.
thereafter pay. Explain that whole
Yeah.
situation to
So,
us.
in terms of the National Credit Act, you are allowed to see your own credit report once a year. I always recommend to everyone, make it your birthday month. On your birthday month, you go to all 5 the big bureaus and you actually get your report
Is
there.
that for free?
For free.
One from
a
each
ye-
bureau for
for
free.
Thereafter, you can request it at a fee of normally 20 Rand to get your profile again. But what they do is when there's a default listing, let's say you default and a specific account at a specific bank, they will give you notification 21 days because they have to. If you don't come back, they will then continue with the listing. That listing is only done at one bureau. So when you remove it, you got to try and establish what bureau holds that listing and then remove it from that bureau and then double check all the other bureaus as well.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here because this is getting complicated now, and I want to try and simplify it and streamline it for everybody. Let's join companies and end users together, the man in the street and people who are listening who are directors of companies, etc. If I think potentially that I may be blacklisted, what happens if I don't know that I've been blacklisted? Is that potentially a problem as well? Could I, by ignorance or not having picked up a document or a letter or
How
whatever
are
it
they
might be,
supposed to notify you?
could I suddenly wake up one morning and go to a cell phone provider asking for a contract and they go, hang on, chap, you're blacklisted? And let's just start there. Can that happen?
Definitely. The challenge we have is that the people are moving and they forget that they need to update their information where to actually receive communications when they move. So what will happen is, just say you've got like a clothing account and you opened that 18 years when you were 18 years old. It's now 20 years later, but they still hold your old address. Because most of the statements are received online, if you didn't update and you default, they will send it to the address they have online because that's your domicilium you chose. So you will not know about that. That little registration slippy you get in the post, if you don't go and fetch it and you ignore that, they only have to prove that they've sent it to your postal address. Then you wouldn't have received that. And definitely you will wake up one morning and you will have a challenge. They will actually not allow you certain credits. And if you look at the whole affordability guidelines that's coming up now with the amendments of the National Credit Act, it's going to be more stringent now. So a lot of people advertise that you can get credit if you're blacklisted. All of that is going to fall away. And so you will have to make sure that you check your credit profile frequently. Not only for that, but also ID fraud. How are you going to know someone else opened an account in your name if you do not check your credit profile? Because on there, you will see what inquiries was done in your name. And you can then see there's a bank that did an inquiry, I didn't apply for anything. Then you've got a bigger challenge than just a default listing. You will have ID fraud against your name.
This, and the further we go down this list of questions, the more questions I have for you. But I have to then ask, let's take a scenario where somebody has been blacklisted, whether it's through their own doing or not. That doesn't matter. I think that's irrelevant for this. I'm blacklisted, for example. Now what?
Okay, what you need to do is, number one, find out who blacklisted you, go to that company and pay it up. We've got this big thing that's coming online. It's called amnesty, and everyone thinks we're all going to be whitewashed now, and there's going to be no black marks against our names. Up until that point, when we have an amnesty and they decide exactly what's going to go into that amnesty, the only thing that can happen to you is if you pay it up, you prove it, your status can change to a paid up default listing. It's not going to be removed.
Now, what do you do then if you really want your name off that list, though?
You've got to wait the 2-year period.
2 years.
Yeah, so your behavioral, that's why I split the two types of default listing.
Right.
Behavioral is 1 year,
Right.
and then enforcement is a 2-year period. So as a credit bureau, and we had a big fight with one of the bank's directors yesterday about it, we can only update. We're the custodian of the data, so you can only update that data in terms of the National Credit Act. So you need to pay it up. It will then flag as a pay up. Some credit providers will allow you credit or whatever decisions they want to make based on the paid up status, but others will say you have to wait the time out. So people must be very careful. A default listing against your name is seen in a very serious light.
What after the 2 years?
Then it will automatically be masked. So there's a date on the default listing. If it's not paid up, it will automatically be masked at the bureau. So it will basically fall off.
And your credit record becomes clean again.
It becomes clean, but the debt is still payable.
Right.
You mentioned the amnesty, Marina. Let's talk a little bit about that because it's caused all kinds of debates. And,
Marina just shakes her head.
I'm looking at the figures and I can sympathize with people who are saying, yay, we're all going to get amnesty. But the fact of the matter is, no, we're not all going to get amnesty. It's a portion of the people who have some kind of default listing. If I look at the figures, I've heard about 1.6 million, but Ian and I were doing some research, about 9.5 million South Africans who are in some kind of shape or form of default. So it's a very small part of that pool. What is the latest status? We know the banks have said they're not happy with it. We know a lot of the other providers have said they're not happy with it. What is the government's stance?
Okay. The proposal that was done on the amnesty had 3 parts to it. They're currently proposing the second part, which they call the medium risk proposal. What that entails is that everyone with a blacklisting or a default listing, that listing will be removed. The second part is all judgments in future, if it's paid up, you can apply for that to be removed. And then going forward, new default listings or blacklistings that goes against your name, if you can prove it's paid, they will actually remove it or they have to remove it.
And there's no 2-year/1 year
No,
waiting
2 year.
period.
So
Okay.
this is the proposal that's on the table. I sit on various boards and everyone has got their own opinion. My personal opinion, which I have to give at this stage, I think, because it differs on the different boards, is that the amnesty is a good thing, but you can't do it blanket. There should be a process things happen in your life that cause you to be in a situation where you can't pay. And I understand that. But it's got to be a process of getting you out of that and not just a blanket amnesty. The figures that we have at this stage is closer to going to be to about 4.5 million. If you look at the status up until the end of September, and why the figure is changing, that figure was end of December 2011. Currently, there's 9.78 million consumers that's in a bad situation on their credit record, but that does not only include default listings, that's judgments and people that's not paying on time. That's how you get to the 9.7.
So what will the criteria be, though? What are the filter mechanisms? Is it depending on how much money you owe that you'll fall within that amnesty?
No,
there's
everything.
been debate there as well.
Yeah, so they wanted to look at an amount of 10,000 initially, but that is not the proposal that's currently at Parliament. So the blanket amnesty for default listings is at Parliament, and it's probably going to go through. So irrespective of what the amount of the listing is, the challenge we have, it's not taking the debt away. So the debt is still collectible, and that is what the people out there don't understand. Right. They will still continue against you. They can never list you for that same debt again, but they can still continue to collect the debt. So what is the alternative means they're going to use to collect the debt? They're probably going to go get a judgment against you.
And that's even worse.
And that's even worse. That stands for 30 years against your name.
And how does business rescue fall into this whole space? I mean, somebody who is blacklisted in their capacity as running a business, owning a business, a director of a business, does business rescue get you out of any kind of listing trouble or anything like that?
No. This guy will probably benefit from the amnesty going forward, so that will assist him in his personal name. But the business rescue will look at the business and they will look at how can they best pay the debt of the business. But any legal actions and any listings that's happened are still going to stand until such time that they either get liquidated or sequestrated, and then the liquidation or sequestration is going to stand against your name.
Marina, just a kind of a blanket question, but there's a rising middle class in this country. People have now have access to credit. They have pay slips. They have jobs, and folks for many years, due to the apartheid system, never had that access to money like that. The financial education of paying every month, making sure that your debts are paid up, surely has lagged behind. Has this meant that you're finding more and more people getting into default judgments?
Definitely. If you look at the last quarter, I'm just looking at the figures here, there were 71,000 consumers in the last quarter of last year that went into a worse situation than they were before, more than there was the quarter before that.
Scary.
So it's definitely, and I also think, there's rising cost. We've got e-tolls, we've got petrol price hikes, all of those things, and people are not getting that high.
Credit crunch is coming.
That high salary increases.
Yep.
So all of that, people can no longer afford their lifestyle.
And what is an organization like yourself or anyone doing to educate people into not getting into that situation?
we've got various drives, once again, depending on the board. But from our side, I've been involved with the universities, and I've been to Tshwane University of Technology in Bloemfontein, and I'm also busy with Cape Town. We try at that level, before they become credit active, to actually educate them at that point, because that is the point. You need to know how to start using the accounts. Because what does a general guy do? He opens the Edgar's account. They all do that. They wait 3 months, they open a cell phone account. That's how they start their life as a credit active consumer. If they don't pay that will haunt them for at least the next 2 years after that. And you need to train them at the point when they enter the credit market how to do that. And that's the only way I think you will have success.
But
Fair enough.
surely the banks have a role to play in this education, and there's room for collaboration between your kind of organisation and the banks. I mean, the banks are issuing credit cards.
Yeah, they do. And I also think the National Credit Regulator is going on a campaign in March countrywide where they're going to try and educate consumers. The only way that the amnesty, and with the amnesty goes the new affordability guidelines and default listing guidelines, it's really going to work in South Africa, is if we can educate the consumer what this means and how are they going to stay clean after this. So it's every single person in South Africa that gives credit to a consumer, and every employer must train and educate. We all need
Fair
to work
enough.
together.
Put it into the school curriculum.
Yeah.
say,
No,
yeah.
absolutely.
Financial
Definitely.
literacy. We've got a question from a listener that we've answered, but I just want to clarify it for them, because they might have missed the reason. So it's a typical situation that you described earlier, Marina. Somebody who is a member of a CC who attracted a default listing by somebody that they were contracted to for non-payment in their personal capacity. They then paid the amount, but cannot have their name taken off that list, and they've been told they need to wait another year.
Okay, so we are bound as credit bureaus by the rules and the regulations of the National Credit Act. That stipulates that it has to wait the year or two out. The only time that you can remove a listing is if it was done in error or you didn't get the notification. So if he got the notification and he got the 21 days,
Claims he did not know about it.
then if he did not know about it, he must query it with the respective bureau.
Right.
If he doesn't within 21 days get the answer, the credit ombud, Mani van Skalkwyk, deal with these specific things, and they can give instruction for that to be removed. So I would recommend that.
Bring on the red
Credit
tape.
ombudsman.
All right, Marina, we're going to leave it there. Are you available online? Please tell me that what you've said here today is available as a document where we can read and follow up.
Yes, I would recommend, we've got a FAQ section on our website where we try and train these people, doing quite a bit of industry presentations on the credit amnesty. All the information and the actual presentations are available, but I'm willing to give my personal email address out. They're more than welcome to contact me.
You're turning yourself into
I tell you what we'll do.
ombudsman.
I tell you what we'll do. Give it to us off the air. We'll put it onto
Yes.
our
Yeah, I
think
website.
we'll do
Better,
that.
They're
better
more than
idea.
wel-
Yeah.
or refer them to our website.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
got a whole team that deals with queries.
What
and
is your
disputes.
website, please, Marina?
It's www.cpbonline.co.za.
Okay, fantastic. Marina Short, the CEO for the Consumer Profile Bureau. Thank you for your time today on The Business. We appreciate that. What an interesting chat. And I hope that everyone listening will be able to steer clear of anything that has to do
What's
with
the
you
date
guys.
for the amnesty?
Well, we don't have final answers. The National Credit Act amendments must go through first, which has been done, set in Parliament, and all the comments was done. We are expecting something before the elections.
Before the elections
Yeah,
this year.
so, but I can't confirm it.
All right,
okay.
so
But
we'll
it's an
chat after that.
We will.
Once that's happened.
Marina, thank you for your
We'll-
time
we'll
today.
catch up
Pleasure.
again.
Have a good day.
The Business on balls.co.za. Brought to you by FNB Business Banking.